reason why I'm actually putting a radius on the fretboard already at this point is basically because I'll be pouring resin on top just to kind of stabilize the fretboard, hopefully to stabilize the fretboard. If I left it blank like this, poured the resin and then put the radius on it, I'm afraid that the edges would come through and then those wouldn't be covered in resin. Now if I actually put in the radius beforehand, sand it to 320 or 400 or whatever I want to sand it to, and then put the resin on top, I'll have that layer to kind of protect the fretboard because it is very soft material and you want your fretboard to be, you know, hard enough for wear and tear. And, you know, hopefully that'll let the frets sit in a little bit nicer too. Now what I'm hoping is that doing the resin in general, it will seep into the wood and kind of stabilize it and make it a bit denser. I don't know whether it's going to work, but I have, well, I'm not going to say high hopes, but I hope that it will do that. And the reason for the marker is just to show that I get the radius in there the way it should. So once all of the pen lines are gone, I should be all well and good. I'm letting the sandpaper do the work. I'm not really pushing because I don't want to force a sort of concave onto the fretboard. So 120 on this side, then I'm going to go with, you know, move up the grids up until I get to 320. And yeah, my camera is running kind of low on battery, so I'm going to put that to charge so that I don't miss any of the resin pouring stuff. And yeah, when you see me next, I'll be ready to go with the resin. All right, first things first, let's talk a little bit about the setup. So what I've done here is I have a few different pours going on at the same time because it's easier just to pour everything at once instead of doing one thing there and another thing there. So I have 2 ebony fretboards that are going to be for, you know, stock at some point to be used because I want to use all the ebony that I got, and these were lacking in different parts. Then it's the pine guitar build. I am trying to pour resin to make it hopefully a bit harder and denser in material. And then I have a production dataless with a river. Now what I've done is I've siliconed off all the areas so that I won't have any overflow. I've already checked everything except for the pine fretboard. I've checked that there are no leaks with just water and everything is perfect and fine. Just a precaution though, if there are any leaks, I don't want it leaking all over my balcony, so I have the fretboards in a tray. So if any leaks are going to happen, it's going to all just go in the tray. No harm, no foul. The body, however, I didn't have a tray for that. Well, I would have, but nothing that I want to sacrifice. So instead I have a little bit of wood underneath and then just a piece of plastic with a lip on it so that if there's any overflow, I won't have the body stuck to anything because there's a little piece of wood. It'll just drip off the side and then go into this little trough. Another very important thing is a level, just to make sure that, well, my surface is level. So there are pieces of wood and carpet and everything like that, making sure that it's perfectly flat. That's all well and good. Now, I've already done the math, but now I need to actually pour in all the resin. Now I am going to be using Polymères Technologies Chill Clear, and I've been waiting to use this stuff forever. And it's basically a 2-component resin, epoxy. So I'm going to need 2 parts of the A and 1 part of the B. Now first things first, I'm going to do the fretboards. It's going to be a bit tricky because the pine will just have clear epoxy poured onto it, but then for the 2 ebony fretboards I want black. So then I have some of Crimson Guitar's Stunning Spirit Stains. I'm going to try if these work out for the color. And then for the data list, because it's going to be green, I have some Spirit Green, and I'm going to be using the little dropper from the blue that I have. But first I'm going to do the fretboards, and then I'll get back to the data list. So here it goes. Bit extra, but manage. It's not too bad right now because I only have I don't have the hardener in there yet, so I don't need to worry about it going off on me just quite yet. It's just what do I have, 146 divided by 2. Now once this goes, I need to keep on mixing for about 10 minutes or so before applying to get that right sort of feel. There, perfect. Now it's going to be a whole lot of mixing that you're not going to find all that interesting, for sure. One of the things I need to be very wary of is getting the bottom and the sides, scraping every last bit, and I'm going along the bottom because I don't want to create bubbles, even though this epoxy should react in a way where the bubbles kind of blow out by themselves. Remember to scrape the bottom, scrape the sides. Now it is pretty cold out here on the balcony, so that should mean that this doesn't go off quite as soon. Getting every last bit before pouring. Alright, here it goes. Let's try this out. Hopefully there are no leaks. That would suck. Now what I'm hoping is that it'll penetrate the wood at least a little bit to kind of stabilize it. It's going to add a little bit of thickness to the fretboard for sure on the fretboard side, or the actual fret side, but I'm not worried about that because I can then plane down the back of it accordingly. I don't need a massive amount either for the pine guitar, and as long as I cover the entire length of it, should be fairly okay. Alright, now I don't want this going off, so let's mix in some black. Alright, so I made a mess, and I need to go get paper immediately because this is spirit stain. And it won't come off all that well. These bottles were not built for pouring, it turns out. So there we are. I am now hopefully mixing a nice amount of black, although I think I could go for more, but I don't want to dilute the epoxy. No leaks to speak of. That's always a bonus. So this one's a bit wider so that I can potentially make a 7-string fretboard out of it. I didn't make the wall between the two ebony fretboards tall enough for the epoxy, but that should be just fine. Then it's time for me to do some more. All right, so next up we are going to drill the truss rod access. I'm going to do that first by doing a pilot hole and then by drilling the actual hole itself. Now I have the fretboard, which is going to be coming up to about there. So realistically, I'd want to start somewhere here and move in from there. Now I'd like to do it already at this stage because, and yeah, start off by going straight down and then slowly move to come down. There we are. Now I'm just going to make that a bit bigger. Usually, I'll go with a 7.5. That's pretty good. Sorry for the noises. That's one of the dogs wants attention because he heard me talking. And he is a needy puppy. Now, I tend to go fairly easy because I don't want to break that gap. But this is going to have a fender style nut. So breakage like that isn't really an issue. I just, of course, would want to avoid it. But seeing as it's pine, it breaks apart like hell. Now, because it did that, let's have a look. Yeah, it does look kind of crapola. That's not very nice at all. So what I'm thinking now is maybe I actually do a truss rod cover. Yeah, I think that's probably what I have to do now. Try and make that look a little bit nicer. All right, let's install the truss rod and see what it looks like after that process. I don't need to hammer it in, but I wanted to get a pretty tight squeeze in there. So that means that I'll have just a good bit of clearance. Okay, cool. Let's get to masking off areas I don't want covered in glue. In this case, that's the steel part and the control part, the truss rod. Now I'm doing this as well because I didn't get that bridge like I wanted. So I'm filling up that gap as well. Don't need to worry about that because that's going to get blocked by the fretboard anyways, and there's nothing there to prevent it. The reason why I block off here with masking tape is literally just because I don't want this to get rusted in any shape or form. It probably won't, but I also don't want any glue going into where the Allen key sits, because if you can't adjust your truss rod, what's the point? Okay, then on to the actual glue up process. I wish my bench was higher up, but it isn't, so we'll make do what we have. I have my clamping cauls ready. A very important thing to do is to have everything ready before you do a glue up process. Now, if it was any more complex than this, I would also recommend doing a test, a dry run, but it is but a fretboard. Pretty sure I can manage. Done this countless times before. The dogs are playing in the background, so I excuse all the noise. Hey, doggos, you realize I'm trying to work here, right? Hey, you don't want to have too much glue, but you also don't want to have too little. So you don't want to starve the joint, but you don't want to flood it either, because that's not doing anybody any favors. No time to waste, let's get to it. I've already radiused this, and I have center lines to follow, but I've also added all of that resin on top, so I need to re-radius this. And yeah, rubbing the joint together is actually very beneficial because it will grant me less chance of slippage, which would be very bad indeed. Now this ain't gonna be the prettiest glue up due to there being a gap, because I've already, yep, that will work just fine. What I usually do is I start on both ends and I loosely apply pressure just to kind of hold it in place. Okay, looks good. Looks good. Yeah, all well and good. So now just to clamp her up. Now if you have a good joint, you shouldn't need too much pressure, really, to get the job done. And yeah, like I said, I just have the two on the end at first to hold things in place. And then I move from the middle outwards. And that's just preference. There's no real reason for this, but I like to think that it also kind of gets that glue joint spread out a bit evenly. Not that it does, or not that it does any worse doing it any other way, but this is just the way that I'm used to doing things. And if it's not broke, why fix it? Now, there should be an even splurge of glue from all over if you have a good joint. And looks like we've done well. Great. I can say that I'm pretty satisfied with that. All right, so now that's all well and good. Tomorrow it's time to declamp and then take it to the workshop and trim it down. All right, that's everything for now. Great. It was very rude of me not to show the dogs that I was talking about. Well, there's one little bumpkin, and there's the other little bumpkin. And yeah, they're not helping me with all the work that I'm doing. This one especially. But you're cute. And yes, you're cute too. Yes. Okay, back to work.